Geoff, welcome aboard to the shows. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
I got to read a lot of your stuff before the show. It comes across very clearly that you have a passion for writing, but more than that, you enjoy it. And I want to mention a specific piece, and I want to get the backstory for that.
Okay.
Um, and I can't remember, it was something like how to build wealth like the Addams family. I mean,
Oh,
how much research did you put into that to get all those quotes and all those funny bits? It was hysterical.
well, I appreciate that. I write so much, but that's the one on my blog, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Which I, I write something and then like 2 years later or whatever, I'm like, did I write that? I had a lot of fun with that. I mean, I do remember it. Boy, how did I, the blog is kind of a labor of love, and I get like pennies for this. I mean, it's not like some of the articles where I'll make enough to pay my electric bill and all that. So to answer that question, I mean, how to build wealth like the Adams family. Um, yeah, I just exhaustively look at a topic with the blog, with the TV professor. I just find a topic that interests me, and and then it's like beating a dead horse. I just go at it until I've looked at every angle, and then I've got a story. And I think in that case, if I remember right, um, I'd read that the Adams family that they're millionaires, and I thought, really? And then I thought about it, and I thought, well, yeah, they've got a Lurch. If I'm remembering, they've got I mix up the Munsters and the Adams family sometimes. But anyway, they've got the butler, and they've got
Yep.
this huge house and all that. And then yeah, Gomez is actually this really savvy entrepreneur, and
Yeah, and
I
lawyer
watched.
was it as well?
Yeah, yes, and a lawyer too. You're right. It was
Yeah,
both. And growing up watching the show, I missed that completely. And then when I learned that he was actually, this millionaire, yeah, I thought, well, how did he do it? And so I just went in exhaustively looking into the show, and
can
yeah,
you
I don't think there's any
recall?
real secret to how I did it. Just
Can you recall how much like research hours you put into this?
I mean, it was hours over weeks, I think. I, I come back to it. I mean, like a lot of stories, I work on it for a while and then I come back to it and then I work on it a while. And that's how, like with the blog, it's fun. I mean, it's just a labor of love. But yeah, that one took a while.
And the kind of coming back philosophy is that does it give you fresh perspective and kind of up the quality?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, the moment writing becomes work, well, it's work. And
Mm.
I have deadlines all the time. But with the blog, I make my own deadlines. So yeah, I want it to be fresh, and so it's just ready when it's ready.
I thought it was delightful, and your
Well,
passion
thanks.
for it came across. I really appreciate it. It made me smile and laugh out loud. It was great.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. I never know who's reading the blog, and um, yeah. So anyway, it's just fun to hear that.
The You wrote two books, and they are both. Would it be fair to characterize them as historical novels?
No, no,
No.
they're not
What would you call
novels.
them?
Historical nonfiction that hopefully reads like a novel. I mean, that was my goal. But C.C. Pyle's Amazing Foot Race and Washed Away, which was about the flood of 1913. Those every word in there, I mean, happened. Yeah, nothing's fiction.
What drew you to that genre? What was you had history buff? Like why write two books on different topics too, but still
Mhm.
1928 and 1913 are the kind of dates, the years where these two books happen.
Yeah, I love history. I always have. It's hard to even pinpoint, when I decided I loved history. I guess as a kid, I don't know. Growing up, I would get up in the middle of the night and watch old movies, like Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. Before the days of streaming in the VCR, I'd get up at like 3 a.m. And I mean that's kind of a little different, but it is his history movies that are now history, I guess.
Right.
But yeah, I love. I think I just found myself gravitating towards history writing. I remember early in my career, I managed to write about Typhoid Mary for some reason,
Mm.
and wow, I mean, I loved that. I just learning about all the people that she ended up spreading typhoid to,
Yeah.
and she just didn't believe in germs, and and refused to believe that she could be a typhoid carrier. So I mean, that wasn't like the moment that I said, "Oh, I'm going to write history," but I've just always loved history, and and then C.C. Pyle's Amazing Foot Race, which happened in 1928. When I read that,
Wait, hold
I
on.
might have.
Let's give for
Oh,
the
sure.
audience that are not. Let's give a two-liner of what this is because it's incredible. This is about, and you should probably do this, not me, but a person
No,
who
it's fine.
decided to go 3,000 miles coast to coast in 84 days. Is that right?
Yeah, well, C.C. Pyle, he was a sports promoter,
Mm.
and this was during the age of a lot of endurance contests where people would um, dance marathons, which I'm sure you've heard of, and they would dance, like for 36 hours until, the last couple was standing. And CC Pyle came up with this idea to run a marathon. Well, to do a foot race from Los Angeles to New York City. And I think initially it wasn't like, oh, let's do 84 days, but that's what it wound up being. And so he would have people run from city to city.
Mm.
And, the first day you might run 60 miles and, and you'd spend the night and in a hotel and recover and all that. And then get up the next morning and then you'd run again. And one of his big mistakes was he started off in California to New York. Well, California, you've got the desert. And so right away, people were like dropping like flies. But
Mm.
he had this huge prize of like $25,000 to whoever came in first.
Mm.
So this, it was shortly before the Great Depression, but times were not wonderful in 1928. And
Yeah.
$25,000, I can't remember how much that is now, but it's probably like 250,000 or half a million. So
I'll
it
do a quick
was.
calculation.
Oh, okay, okay.
You
When the
keep
book
talking.
came out, I had the actual number. It's probably not half a million, but it was a lot of money. And so yeah, he organized this thing, and it was an amazing. Well, yeah, I wanted the news reporters called it the Bunyan Derby.
Mm.
Feet bunions,
Yeah.
and I wanted to call the book the Bunyan Derby, but my publisher, she just didn't like the idea of, or was Rodale, and anyway, they didn't like the idea of having Bunyan in the title, so C.C. Pyle's Amazing Foot Race is what we came up with.
So that is $500,000 in today's money, believe it or not.
Okay, I was right.
Yeah, it's on a 4% interest. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
so what was the moment that you're doing the research where you're learning about this historical journey and you're like, holy shit, like, I can't believe this is what people were doing back in the day. What was one of those key moments for you of discovery in the research?
Oh, well, one thing, I mean, I read about that in probably some reference book in my 20s. I was in my 30s when the book came out. And I'll bet, I remember I was at my parents' house, and I mean, I was probably 23 or something. I read it in a reference book, and I was like, how have I never heard of this? I'm still amazed. Well,
Right.
and, shows that the book was not exactly a huge success, that I think most people have like, how have I not heard of this, but I was just like dumbfounded that this race happened in 1928 across the whole country, and and reading about it and all the people that were that didn't make it on the way. I mean, nobody was killed or anything, but you had people dropping like flies because, I mean, to run one marathon. I mean, I've never done that, but to run one would be amazing. These people are running like one a day, and often, as I said, 60 miles. I mean, it was usually probably 30 miles a day, but that's incredible. Um, I think, I can't remember, it might have been 70 miles that was the most in one day. So anyway, I don't even really know if I answered your question exactly, but
But
Um,
there's something there, right? I mean,
mhm,
we're I would blame social psychology, right? It's this negativity bias. It's if it bleeds, it leads. We're so
mhm.
focused on all the garbage that, the good stuff or the amazing stuff or the inspiring stuff sometimes or very often take kind of the second place. Um, but I feel like that's wrong at some fundamental level, quite honestly.
Yeah, well, it's wonderful to. I mean, that's what I love about history when you find something that inspires you, which this did. I mean, I have to admit, I mean, I was just. Because I mean, 1928, the roads were not good. The shoes were not good. I mean, to run across the entire country today would be incredible.
Yes.
But 1928, I mean, it was just an entire new ball game. And when you're saying about discovery, I mean, with research, when I get really deep in the weeds, and like with the Adams family, even, and you discover things that were there all along, but you'd never seen them,
Right.
and you had no idea that this was the story. Um, yeah, there's just something magical and fun and sometimes inspiring about it. Um, so yeah. Anyway,
I
I
appreciate
will
that.
ramble and then suddenly I'm
But
like, oh, yeah, it's like
look,
somebody hits me with a tranquilizer dart, and I'm like, I don't know what to
here's
do.
my point. I think
Hmm.
that joy of discovery, um, to a certain degree in today's community, and maybe this is just not true, but to a certain degree, we're losing that joy of discovery, that curiosity. Um, I feel like it's being beaten out of my children through the school system. So
Hmm.
I will call the school systems. Some of our teachers I love. I think that they're changing my kids' lives to the others, to the best. But others, I feel like they're like jailers, and it's a jail system basically for so parents can go work. A little harsh, but I've had teachers like that as well.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that's absolutely beautiful, and if people and kids can rediscover that joy through books like yours and other, um, I think that can change a person's life for sure. I believe that.
Wow. Well, thank you. And yeah, I mean, I think there's always, I think there's always going to be a discovery room for discovery, and I, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but um, yeah, I mean, I know what you mean in the sense I think the way society has gotten, sometime, like there are always rules, regulations, things that, like with teaching, where they've got to hit the marks and make sure, you know this and that, and it can get very formulaic. But I do think that, and maybe because of that,
Mm,
when you do discover something, just wonderful and or some, whether it's school and some hidden talent that you didn't know you had, or just, reading something and you find some fact or story that just sort of blows you away. You know, and it may be that it's more exciting than ever,
yeah,
because yeah,
content.
especially if you feel like you're not, that you're worn down all the time and that you're not finding that discovery. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think, you almost notice it more now,
Yeah,
if
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
fair. We could also lament over the instant gratification culture of the TikToks and all that, right? Where you're not
Hmm.
going deep but so Washed Away, I think is another incredible story. Give us the premise. Well, what is this about, and why does it matter?
Um, well, I grew up, I grew up hearing about this flood in 1930, or I mean, in 1913. It's the 1913 flood, and growing up in like the 1970s, I would still hear relatives talking about it. Not that they knew, I mean, like my Uncle Pat or whatever, he was probably born in the 1920s,
Mm,
but he heard people, talking about it. And I mean, I don't know if it matters exactly, but I think all, his history and stories from long ago, do they do impact us still in the sense, um, well, I mean, now, we've got flooding is, I mean, it's a huge problem, even today. You would think that we would have this licked by now. I mean, you really would. I mean, And we don't. I mean, people, climate change is making flooding worse. In 1913, this affected, I can't quite remember how many states. I think it was like 20,
Sniper.
23,
14 was it?
14.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Told you
but it
we do our
was,
research.
yeah, it was a good chunk of well, I mean, that's the thing. I wrote this book like, over 10 years ago. So
Yeah,
now
fair
I
enough. Fair
don't,
enough.
yeah. But it was a terrible, terrible flood.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, because now, like if there's a climate change flood, issue, it's usually the state, like Texas will have floods, or, one state, two states, but 14 states, that's, pretty incredible. And it started off with like this tornadoes were part of the storm, and that leveled, parts of like Omaha, and then just this incredible storm, and flooding, hit these 14 states. And it wasn't all at once. Like, by the time, like Dayton, Ohio, which
yeah,
is
hit
near where
hard.
I grew up, that was hit the worst. But then, Dayton's drying out, and you've got the South, that now they're dealing with it.
Mm.
So, anyway, I mean, it was just a terrible flood. And when I read about it, well, and growing up hearing about it all the time, I just kind of thought, why don't more people know about this flood? And I just thought it was important to kind of get the story out there.
Do you feel like these kind of events, large floods, 9/11, they
Mm,
mold that generation, and then come a generation or two after, they didn't feel it. Maybe they know about it, maybe they've heard about it, but they didn't feel it. It wasn't in their blood. Do you think that molds the generation to a certain degree, and that the next generations that come, by not learning that history, or not, obviously they couldn't, but living through it, they're losing something of their history and of their ability to even make good decisions?
yeah, I think, I mean, it's really interesting how certain events impact people, or generations rather. Think about the Kennedy assassination, which
Yep.
I wasn't around for, but my parents sure were, and they would talk about it all the time. I mean, I would hear about it throughout my, you know growing up, and all of that. And now you don't. I mean, not that you don't hear about it. I mean, it's in the news. When they release, um, documents, it's still discussed as a conspiracy theory. Um, but it's fascinating to me to how some of these events shape generations. And 9/11, I mean, I think for 10 years it was probably kind of scarred, and I was nowhere near
Yeah.
that. Um, but it was, yeah, that was an amazing time. And my kids now, they were born. My oldest daughter was born, I think 2 months, 1 month, yeah, about 2 months after 9/11, a month and a half. And she's heard about it her whole life. And my other daughter was born 2004, and she's heard about it as well. And I've lost my train of thought, but anyway, it does definitely impact. And I think, well, I think what I was going to say is that I think the next generation, because of their parents talking about it and all that, I
Mm.
mean, if it's a big enough thing where it kind of scars everyone, I do think that next generation kind of picks up in it, and they're living in its
Yeah.
shadow.
Yeah.
But by the time my kids have kids, they're going to hear about 9/11, and it really will be like this ancient history.
Yeah.
Whereas JFK, it was 7 years before I was born, but it doesn't seem like ancient history.
Yeah.
Uh, so,
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I don't want to beat up on the teachers. We've done that enough for today. But when I do meet these teachers that bring history alive
mhm,
and make you passionate about a topic that is like something you would read in a history book and kind of not be passionate about, but they're able to do that, it just makes such an amazing difference. So,
mhm.
if I had to ask for one thing, it's to have many more people that are just passionate about, the subjects that they teach, and do so very well, because that it's a huge difference, is in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah, no, I agree with you. I remember a history teacher I had who, he was the most, we all liked him. He was very nice.
Mm.
and I know he loved history, but he was a soft-spoken man,
Mm.
and he was so dry, and people would be like falling asleep at their desks and fighting. Like, I mean, some people hated him because
Mm.
he was so boring. I mean, he
Right.
was known as being just boring.
Mm.
I could tell he really enjoyed history. I felt really bad for him.
Mm.
I'd be watching him thinking, "Oh, please," just, and a year or two earlier, I had Ohio and a teacher who taught Ohio history, because I grew up in Ohio and still live here in Ohio. And anyway, that guy, I mean, I don't really remember any of his stories. I wish I
Mm.
could. I could share some, but he would tell amazing stories. I mean, bonkers, like just where you would just be on the edge of your seat and you would be mesmerized, and he would just tell these long incredible stories that really got you excited about history. I never really thought about it until now, but I don't I'm sure I liked history before him, but maybe this I think he was in 8th grade, but maybe this Ohio history teacher kind of helped me, get on the path of history. But you're right. I mean, when you can find a teacher who really can perform almost as well as well as recite the facts, you really have somebody amazing.
Yeah, I would definitely, not to get too political, but I would definitely pay politicians more so we have less of the corrupt ones. And I would
Mm.
definitely pay teachers more so we have
Oh,
better
yes.
storytellers and passionate about their job. I think we're
Uh,
losing out as a society by underpaying, these important functions, right?
yeah. Oh, I
Um,
absolutely agree.
believe it or not, this has been so much fun. We're out of time.
Oh,
Um, we have one really difficult question. It's the only scripted question in the show,
okay.
and it forces you to get a little personal. So, going back to 20-something-year-old Geoff, what would be your advice to him?
Wow. And the reason I'm saying wow is I think I was having this conversation with myself like today or yesterday. I mean, God, that's just amazing. That you asked me that, but now do I have an answer? My advice for 20-year-old Geoff Williams, God, invest in Apple.
No cheating.
I mean, because that's like what I want to do is go back to my 20-year-old self and have a long discussion with him, like, exercise more. Oh God, maybe don't take life so seriously, or well, and the time goes by so fast, and I would probably, I mean, I was very ambitious at 20, um, and you could argue too ambitious in a way, but at the same time, it's very easy to get complacent in your life, where you find a job that you like and you just stick with it, which longer than you should because maybe you like it, but so I don't know. I would tell my 20-year-old self to start writing books earlier than I waited until I was like, I don't know, 35 or something like that. I mean, I remember I was mowing my lawn and I just kind of thought about my 20s and how I wanted to be, an author and not just writing magazine articles. And I had a long lecture, and that night I started researching agents and found one. But anyway, what would I tell my 20-year-old self? Yeah, boy, um, my 20-year-old self would be thrilled to know that I'm still writing. Um, I'm sure my 20-year-old self would be God, I'd probably try to warn him about AI. I mean, I've lost at least one job from AI, where literally we were told, you're all being replaced by AI. And then lots of jobs, maybe I've lost and not known it that AI took over. But gosh, I wish I had some really great pearls of wisdom,
Are
for
you?
like other 20-year-olds listening to this. But
I think I think you're being tough on yourself. I think you've given quite a few really good ones. Um, I have to ask a small follow-up question.
sure.
Um, Do you feel like that you're getting on the AI boat and leveraging it to accelerate your work, or do you feel that AI is evil? Where do you stand?
I'm
Or a
somewhere in
little
the
bit of
middle.
both?
Yeah,
There
a
you
little bit of
go.
both. I mean, I've experimented a little with AI
Mm,
just to I've never like used it, like to write an article.
mm,
But I'm sure that there are ways to, well, one way I've used it is like a thesaurus.
yeah,
I find that it's kind of better than an actual thesaurus. It'll just give me,
yeah,
you can really kind of tailor it to, well, instead of giving me this word, I want this word with this mood or whatever. So it can work pretty well with that, and I'm still choosing the words, but it's giving me lots of ideas. So, um, but I do think, it could be pretty evil if we're not careful. Um, I mean, you can think about just about every way that AI, could replace people.
yeah,
One of my daughters wants to teach, and even though I think we would all say that we do not want AI teaching our kids, but you can imagine how it could happen,
oh yeah.
in some AI program and all that. And then you think to yourself, if AI can take over everything, it's like, well, what then? What do we do?
What does life look
So
like?
I don't know. I've sort of lost my train of thought again. I because I go on forever, and then I'm like, what am I talking about? But yeah, AI. I guess I'm somewhere in the middle, evil
Fair
and
enough.
okay.
Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you.
Oh well, thank you. You've been great, and I really appreciate you having me.